Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial on how to make increases in crochet and how to make them evenly so that your fabric becomes even. And you can see the difference on these two pictures, and we're gonna dig more into the differences, why it becomes like this. So I'm gonna start with making a foundation single crochet, and if you don't know what it is, it works also to make a regular chain. It just depends on what project you are making and what the instructions say. And here I'm showing what to make for my limoncello cardigan, but this tutorial also works as an instruction in general of how to spread out your increases so that you get an even structure in the end. So here I'm showing how to make a foundation single crochet, but if you're not interested in that, you can just go to the next section where I'm gonna start working in double crochet and showing how I make the increases in order not to become uneven. And first I'm gonna show how I usually don't want to do it, and then I'm gonna show how to spread out your increases so that you don't get this unevenness. So here I have my chain, and in this case I'm going to assume that I'm going to start with 27 stitches, and I'm gonna make 4 increases evenly spread out. If it says like that in the pattern, evenly spread out. And then I'm usually starting with a chainless DC, so not chains but a chainless DC. And I'm gonna start making 4 DC. This is just an example, just to clarify, it's an example of what a pattern could say. And I'm going to write the calculations in the description box below so that you can look at it without stress. So here I'm starting with 4 DC, and then I'm making an increase by making 2 DC in the next stitch. And then I have calculated that in order to spread out evenly, I need to have 4 increases, and that means that I'm gonna make 5 DC in between every increase. So there are ways to calculate this, and I will try to describe it in the description box below if you want to try to count that yourself for a pattern you are making. And now I will continue repeating this pattern, 5 DC and then another increase, until I have 4 increases. Here it actually turns out that I had made 1 stitch too few, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit here, but you know, don't make the same mistake like me. But it doesn't make any difference for our tutorial, so I'm gonna continue. So I'm making an increase, and then I'm making 4 stitches in the end, like I made in the beginning. So here's the first row, and this is going to be the same in both of these ways of working that I'm going to show here. But now on the second row, I'm going to show the difference. And to explain what I'm going to do after that, I'm going to continue increasing 4 stitches on every row. And in this first example, I'm just going to place the increases on top of each other. So on the next row, I'm going to make the increase of that row into the second stitch, for example, of the 2 DC that make up the increase. And I'm going to work like that for a few rows, and then you're going to see what the result is. So you can see here, after a few more rows, what you maybe saw also on the previous picture, that the fabric becomes a little bit uneven when you work like this, because you are working the increases on top of each other, so the fabric like bulges out where you are making the increase, and that makes your work a little bit pointy. And therefore, next I'm going to show you how you can avoid this if you think it's a problem, or if the pattern tells you to spread out your increases, like in the limoncello cardigan. So here I've started in the exact same way, but I'm gonna make the increases a little bit differently. So I can see where the increases are on the previous row, and I'm gonna start with making a chainless DC. I always struggle with those terms. I don't know if you're the same, but anyway, a chainless DC. And now I'm going to think, where do I want to place the increase in order not to be on top of the increase from the previous row? So for example, I can vary the amount of stitches that I make in the beginning. Instead of making 4 in the beginning and 4 in the end, I can make 2, or I can work past the increase and then make the increase. The point is that we should not be working on top of the increase from the previous row, and that is the most important. And then, as long as you maintain the rule that you are working one increase in between every 2 increases from the previous row, you're going to maintain the same amount of increases. So I try to make the increase on this row exactly in between the 2 increases from the previous row. I hope that makes somehow sense. And then it's also important to point out that you do need to count how many increases you have made on every row, because for example, if you make an increase on this second row before the increase on the previous row, then you are going to have to omit making an increase after the last increase on the previous row. Otherwise you will be making an extra increase. So take it as a habit just to count how many increases have I made on this row, to make sure that you stick with 4 or whatever number you are making. And then the point of this video is mostly to show the effect that these 2 ways of working have on your fabric. So I'm just going to fast forward now to having made the same amount of rows as in the previous example, and then we're going to see the difference, because this was something that I was doing unconsciously, but then I realized it's interesting to actually contrast the 2 against each other to see what the difference is. So here we have the final result, and you can see here that the first swatch I made is quite has a clear structure, which you may want to have in some cases. But if you want your yoke, for example, to be smooth, then it can show how important it is to spread out your increases. And this is what I'm telling you to do in the limoncello cardigan pattern, and I hope this video helped just to illustrate what you need to do in order to get this smooth structure. So thank you for watching, and if you found this useful, please subscribe to my channel, and if you want, leave a comment below. Bye bye!